Hello, you're watching A News. I'm Katie Wilson. Here are the headlines. President Trump says the Putin-Zelensky meeting is going to happen. US, EU and UK leaders are set to meet in Scotland for trade negotiations. Tens of thousands flee their homes as Thailand and Cambodia clash. Efforts to end the war in Ukraine are gaining renewed momentum with high-profile mediation attempts and limited breakthroughs. While a ceasefire remains elusive, this week saw some progress on the humanitarian front.
US President Donald Trump says a long-awaited face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky is going to happen. However, he expressed his regrets it hasn't happened already. Speaking before leaving for Scotland, Trump emphasised that such a summit should have taken place 3 months ago. His remarks come amid heightened diplomatic efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war. President of Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan is now stepping up mediation. He announced plans to bring Trump and Putin together in Istanbul for direct negotiations. Erdogan said Ankara would hold talks with both leaders this week to assess the possibility of hosting the long-anticipated summit. Meanwhile, Russian and Ukrainian delegations met on Wednesday for negotiations in Istanbul's Chiragan Palace. This was their third round of talks after previous sessions happening in May and June. The Ukrainian side proposed a high-level leaders' summit by late August to finalise a peace deal.
The priority number one is to organize a meeting of the leaders of presidents, where participation of President Trump and Erdogan will be most valuable. A real ceasefire and end to all strikes on civilian infrastructure. This can be a crucial first steps towards lasting peace. We proposed to the Russian side to hold such a meeting of leaders until the end of August.
But Russia's delegation dismissed the idea, insisting that a Putin-Zelensky meeting could only occur to formalise an agreement already reached.
For this meeting to happen, we need to work out the deal conditions first and to understand what will be actually discussed at this meeting. Actually, this meeting is not for discussing a deal, but for wrapping it up, signing the final agreement. As the saying goes, the end crowns the work. There is no point in the meeting to discuss all of this all over again.
Still, there was one breakthrough. Both sides agreed on a large-scale prisoner swap. Each side will release 1,200 prisoners of war. Russia also pledged to return the remains of 3,000 fallen Ukrainian soldiers. Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed that over 1,000 soldiers had returned home, many in poor health after years in captivity. Russia likewise welcomed its freed troops in Belarus, sharing images of emotional reunions. Despite the humanitarian progress, there was no movement toward a ceasefire. The Turkish foreign minister urged both parties to halt what he called a bloody war, but the 40-minute meeting concluded without tangible progress on ending the violence.
The war in Ukraine continues to evolve with shifting front lines and a sharp increase in military engagements. While Russia advances in some areas, Ukrainian forces continue to repel assaults across multiple fronts.
At least 9 civilians were killed and 61 injured in Russian attacks across Ukraine over the past 24 hours. Regional authorities reported on July 26. Russia launched a wave of overnight ballistic missile strikes on Saturday, heavily targeting Ukraine's Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions. The city of Kharkiv endured a particularly intense assault, hit by drones, missiles and guided aerial bombs throughout the night. Meanwhile, fierce battles continue around the eastern city of Pokrovsk, a key logistics hub. President Volodymyr Zelensky said in his latest address that this front is currently the main focus of Ukraine's military efforts.
There was a report on the operational situation, delivered by Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky. All operational directions were covered. with particular focus on Pokrovsk. It receives the most attention. In the Sumy region, we continue to act in the border areas. I also want to thank all our units operating on Russian territory.
In the north, Ukrainian troops are also holding their ground in the Sumy region, where Russian forces have recently made incursions. Russia claimed to have seized 5 settlements in the past week. Russian Defense Ministry also reported that air defense downed 5 HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems and 257 fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles of the Ukrainian armed forces in 24 hours. Ukraine's general staff confirmed 85 combat engagements along the front lines over the past day, with the most intense fighting centered on Pokrovsk.
At least 6 people were killed and 13 others were wounded on Saturday morning in an armed attack on a judiciary building in Iran's southeastern city of Zahedan. According to Iranian media, the assault, which has been claimed by the militant group Jaish al-Adl, began with gunfire at the courthouse before spilling over to target civilians. Iranian security forces killed 3 of the attackers, and authorities have launched an investigation. Zahedan, which has long been troubled by unrest, lies near Iran's border with Pakistan and Afghanistan. Fighting along the Thai-Cambodian border has killed more than 30 people and forced over 130,000 others to flee their homes as clashes continue into a 3rd day.
The worst border fighting between Thailand and Cambodia in 13 years has claimed over 30 lives and displaced more than 130,000 people from their homes. Thailand reports 7 soldiers and 13 civilians killed, while Cambodia confirms 5 soldiers and 8 civilians dead, according to Cambodian Defense Ministry spokesperson Mali Socheata. Despite talks brokered by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, who said a ceasefire agreement was reached on Thursday night, fighting continued on the ground. Anwar remains committed to pursuing peace between the 2 countries. The UN Security Council held an emergency closed meeting on Friday with representatives from both Thailand and Cambodia. Cambodia's UN ambassador called for an unconditional ceasefire and a peaceful resolution. Thailand also submitted a letter blaming Cambodia for the conflict and called on the international community to demand an immediate halt to fighting and renewed dialogue. Meanwhile, China has denied allegations of supplying military equipment to Cambodia amid the border tensions. The conflict's roots go back to colonial-era borders drawn by French authorities in 1907. At that time, Thailand, then Siam, was pressured by France to sign a treaty that included a map placing the ancient Preah Vihear temple inside Cambodian territory. Cambodia views this map as legally binding and has used it to support its claims. Thailand disputes the map's accuracy and the treaty's validity, saying it was signed under pressure and never fully approved. Tensions rose sharply in 2008 after Cambodia listed the temple as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This triggered strong nationalist backlash in Thailand. That year, Thai soldiers reportedly moved near a disputed pagoda close to the temple. Cambodia claims this land, but Thailand says the border there was never fully marked. The dispute stems from a 1962 International Court of Justice ruling. The court awarded ownership of the temple to Cambodia by a 9-3 vote. Since then, clashes have happened sporadically, causing casualties on both sides. The latest escalation began in May, after a Cambodian soldier was killed during a border skirmish. Both countries have since imposed trade bans, withdrawn ambassadors, and reinforced their military presence. China has offered to mediate. Foreign Minister Wang Yi described the conflict as rooted in the legacy of Western colonialism. He urged both countries to resolve their differences peacefully to maintain regional stability. Malaysia has proposed a ceasefire plan as ASEAN chair, which Cambodia accepted. Thailand, which had earlier rejected third-party mediation from the US and China, said it agrees in principle to Malaysia's offer, but warned that continued Cambodian attacks undermine the possibility of a truce.
Well, joining us now to unpack this is Professor Eevean Vasel from the State University of New York. Thank you for being with us, Professor. Now, why isn't this conflict between Thailand and Cambodia attracting the White House's attention?
I would say that at this point, it's not attracting much of the attention of the White House, considering that there are so many other things going on, as we all know. So there is the problem or the issue that is going on for several months, that the tariffs imposed by the US administration on so many countries. And some countries, not all, are trying to negotiate these tariffs. There is the problem of the Middle East, particularly the Gaza situation. There is the Ukraine-Russia issue, and there are also some domestic issues here that President Trump is dealing with. There is no much of attention, yet we know that the United States offered to both parties in this fight, Thailand and Cambodia, the US government offered to be a type of facilitator for talks if they wanted to, but apparently these have not made any progress.
Could another factor be China's geographic proximity and regional influence? Could that be a factor in Washington avoiding involvement?
Well, the issue between Thailand and Cambodia, from the perspective of international relations, is quite interesting because, yes, there is geopolitics there. First of all, Thailand is a strong ally of the United States in Southeast Asia. The United States knows the region very well. There has been a long US involvement in the region during the Vietnam War. At the same time, while Thailand is a strong ally of the United States, Cambodia is much more closer to China. So there is a geopolitical question there to be considered. I think that at this point, the dispute between these two countries in Southeast Asia has not escalated to a point that the United States believes that they have to interfere immediately. Certainly, obviously, the US government is paying attention to it, but not still with so much, focus on it.
So what does that tell us about the United States? I mean, Trump has failed to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. Is this a sign that the United States is losing its status as the world's policeman?
It's an issue that is being debated in the United States. So the conditions are changing rather rapidly and dramatically in world affairs. So that world order, the so-called liberal world order that the United States put in place in 1945 and 1946, soon after the World War II, it is no valid at this point. Some people go further to say that that world order has crumbled. That world order was based on the hegemony of the United States. Was based on the idea that as a hegemonic power, the United States would be always ready to deal with international security issues. And to some extent, that was the truth for all these years. Since 1945, since 1946. Yet with the Trump administration is quite different. During the first Trump administration, between 2017 and 2021, President Trump already outlined a little bit of his idea that United States would not try to solve all issues that could happen or are happening in the world. He outlined that idea, including talking about some type of distance from NATO. In this second term, he is much more forceful in the sense that he himself is defining what should be US foreign policy priorities. During the previous years, the previous decades, US foreign policy was defined by committee, so to speak. There were inputs from US Congress, there were inputs from federal agencies like the CIA, like the Department of State, and so on. And then in the end, the US president would make decisions. Now, President Trump, right, is selecting the areas that United States should act and how United States should act.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very much for your insights and for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
Now, President Trump has arrived in Scotland. He's expected to meet EU President Ursula von der Leyen and UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, with trade negotiations high on the agenda.
US President Donald Trump has arrived in Scotland for a 5-day visit, during which he is set to meet European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Sunday. The visit follows Trump's recent threat to impose 30% tariffs on the EU if a trade deal is not reached by August 1st. Von der Leyen confirmed the meeting in a social media post.
Following a good call with the President of the United States, we have agreed to meet in Scotland on Sunday to discuss transatlantic trade relations and how we can keep them strong.
Trump said a trade deal with the EU would be significant, adding that the chances of reaching an agreement are evenly balanced.
I'll be meeting with the EU on Sunday, and we'll be working on a deal. We'll see if we make a deal. Ursula will be here, highly respected woman, so we look forward to that. That'll be good. With the European Union, I think we have a good 50-50 chance. That's a lot.
The White House also confirmed Trump will meet UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer during his stay. Earlier this week, the European Commission briefed member states on the status of trade negotiations and the potential of using anti-coercion tools in response to US tariffs. Member states approved a list of retaliatory tariffs worth 93 billion euros on US imports, with only Hungary voting against. The EU and the United States remain each other's largest trading partners across goods, services and investment.
Europe's leading car makers face plunging profits as tariffs and global competition weigh heavily on the sector. E-News' Anita Sharma has more on the challenges shaping the future of Europe's auto industry.
Hello everyone, welcome to This Day in Europe. Germany's automotive giant Volkswagen sees a seismic drop in first half performance. Operating profit for the second quarter plunged 29% to 3.8 billion euros. That prompted the company to cut its top-end annual profit margin guidance by 1.5% to 5%. Volkswagen cited tariffs, high restructuring costs, and a shift to lower-margin electric vehicles as major contributors to its weakening results. Volkswagen took a 1.3 billion euro tariff hit due to sweeping U.S. import duties. To resolve this, CEO Oliver Blume is considering major investments in U.S.-based production, particularly for Audi and Porsche, to reduce exposure to American tariffs. Market analysts see the results as a canary in the coal mine for European automakers. Some investors welcome a potential 15% U.S.-EU tariff deal, noting that auto stocks surged after Japan secured such terms with Washington. Now, the EU still sees a trade deal, quote, within reach with the United States and is scrambling to finalize the 15% deal modeled after Japan's arrangement to avoid harsher 30% rates set to begin August 1st. But analysts remain cautious about the auto sector, citing a host of structural challenges: a strong euro, sluggish EV adoption, and surging Chinese competition from brands like BYD that continue to pressure auto profits across the board. And Volkswagen certainly isn't alone here. Stellantis, the company behind Jeep, Peugeot, and Fiat, recently reported a preliminary net loss of 2.3 billion euros in the first half due to 300 million euros in tariff-related charges, suspended production, and costly restructuring efforts, despite shipping 1.45 million vehicles, including Rams. The company is also dealing with recalls in a large number of cars. Volvo Motor Group and others are in a tight spot as well. Volvo CEO called the U.S. tariffs, quote, absolutely unnecessary, and warned of collapsing margins unless trade policy shifts before August. EU automakers are lobbying Brussels to negotiate immediate relief using promised U.S. investments as leverage. European trade officials are exploring options such as import mechanisms that essentially reduce tariffs on EU-made cars exported from U.S. plants, benefiting firms like BMW and Mercedes-Benz that already manufacture in the States. At last check, Volkswagen stock moved higher today in Frankfurt. The company plans to slash up to 35,000 jobs by 2030 and double down on EVs, where margins remain challenging. As for Stellantis, shares are higher in Milan, but down about 33% year to date. Investors are waiting for the July 29th report to see how the company rearranges operations in these very precarious times. Overall, the broader auto sector is sending a clear message. Tariffs are not just cost, they mandate strategy shifts. Whether Europe can strike a fair deal is really crucial here. A 15% tariff compromise could ease immediate pressure, but companies warned that without structural adjustments, profits will continue to contract. As the U.S. deadline nears, investors and policymakers want to see if European automakers can rebound on policy promise or buckle under the global cost of protectionism. From Arnhem, Netherlands, I'm Anita Sharma for A News.
Now to Turkey, where renewed talks with the EU have raised hopes of reviving long-stalled membership negotiations. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met with EU Enlargement Commissioner Marta Kos in Istanbul. Our Turkey correspondent Aliya Aziz brings us the latest developments.
Turkey and the EU have restarted meaningful dialogue after years of decline. In late June, Turkish and EU officials exchanged views at regional meetings, laying the groundwork for more cooperation in July, especially on customs, union updates, visa liberalization, and migration policy. While cautious diplomats on both sides described the tone as more open than in previous years. This renewed push comes as Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan delivered a strong message this week, urging Brussels to resume Turkey's EU accession talks without delay. He warned this could be the EU's final opportunity to rebuild trust and stressed Turkey's commitment to full membership. Pointing to Turkey's critical role in energy, defense, and regional diplomacy, Erdogan said Europe needs Turkey as a strategic partner now more than ever. With that message being said, on Friday, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met with EU Enlargement Commissioner Marta Kos in Istanbul, marking her first visit to Turkey since taking office in December 2024. According to diplomatic sources, Fidan emphasized that EU membership remains Turkey's strategic goal, but called for a fair approach from the EU. Previously, he welcomed improvements to Schengen visa rules, but stressed they must apply equally to all Turkish citizens. Crucially, he called for Turkey to be included in all meetings held with other candidate countries, underscoring the need for an unbiased and rational enlargement policy from Brussels. The EU maintains that Turkey must meet all membership criteria, including democratic reforms, the rule of law, and human rights standards. discussions have progressed over the years, with some areas of cooperation continuing despite ongoing challenges. With high-level meetings underway and both sides signaling a desire to move forward, the next few weeks may determine whether Turkey and the EU can finally reset a relationship long defined by stalled ambitions. For A News, this is Aliya Aziz, Istanbul, Turkey.
The President of Kazakhstan is heading to Turkey for an official visit. The leaders of both countries will meet on July 29th for high-level talks in Ankara to discuss regional ties and strategic cooperation. According to Kazakhstan's presidential office, the visit will focus on strengthening the strategic partnership between the two countries. The President will also chair the fifth meeting of the High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council, a key platform for deepening political, economic and cultural cooperation. The multinational military exercise Agile Spirit 2025 has begun in Georgia on Friday, with high-level defence officials from NATO, the EU and partner nations attending the opening ceremony. The exercise opened at the NATO-Georgia Joint Training and Evaluation Centre, co-led by senior Georgian and US commanders. The event gathered high-level representatives from NATO, the EU and foreign defence missions. The drills, which are also taking place in Turkey, involve troops from 11 countries and 2 multinational battalions. They aim to boost combat readiness, coordination and joint operational capabilities among allied and partner forces. Kazakhstan is urging countries bordering the Caspian Sea to unite efforts to save the Caspian, where water levels have been falling since the early 2000s. Kazakhstan's Prime Minister warned that scientists' forecasts for the Caspian Sea are alarming and called for decisive, coordinated action to protect this unique water body. He highlighted regional initiatives in Central Asia, including the creation of a Caspian Sea Research Institute, new monitoring centres and joint programmes to preserve the fragile ecosystem. He stressed that Central Asian nations are ready to cooperate on environmental challenges. That's all we have for now from Baku. Stay tuned to A News for more updates and have a wonderful day.